Hello and croeso. Welcome to the Calon Yarns Knitting Podcast. My name's Lynne and I'm coming to you from Cardiff in Wales in the UK. And this is a podcast all about knitting, crochet, spinning and other craft things in general. I have two finished objects to show you today and an HFO, a half-finished object. Is that allowed? I'm not sure. Anyway, if that's something you're interested in, then we'd better get started. So, welcome, croeso, one and all. I have, as I say, two finished objects to show you this week. So if you are a new viewer, welcome. You are very welcome here. If you are a regular and returning viewer, welcome back. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you for your lovely comments from the last episode and also for the Sleeve Island Knit and Natter episode. And I encourage you, if you haven't been there and you want some company with your knitting projects, then please pop along, hop on a boat, sail away to Sleeve Island, and it's just there where we chat about different life things really. You offer me some questions and suggestions and I can keep you company for a couple of rows or rounds. So that is the more Knit and Natter Club, and this is the more traditional knitting podcast with a sort of a what's on my needles vibe. So yes, what was on my needles? That's the question for this week. So I am sporting my Pelica Vest by, I'll put it here because I can never pronounce things properly and I'll make sure I spell it properly. So yes, Rosa Pomar I think is the name, but I will put it down below. So yeah, the Pelica Vest, it is finished, and I will put in a bit of footage here of me turning around like a crazy fool, because I can't quite see everything in the camera setup here. But yes, I will just show you a quick shufti as well. It has been great. Really love the pattern, and I'll talk through the pattern in a bit more detail if you are thinking about starting one or if you have just started one, just to kind of clarify a few bits and bobs, even though the pattern is really clear, don't get me wrong. But I just wanted to show you, where have I put it now? So I had been saving this to show you all week, so I thought I had inadvertently thrown it away, but I was doing this out of stash. So this is the Debbie Bliss Mia. I was doing it out of stash, and I was playing some really savage yarn chicken. Yarn chicken? Knitting chicken. Yarn chicken. I did have to not do as many decreases at the bottom. I also had to take off a couple of rows between the buttonholes, so they are slightly mismatched. Not that you can really see. Can you see here? I had to kind of not do the, I think it's 29 rows between the buttonholes, so I couldn't quite get that far, and then I had to not do all the decreases. But of course the I-cord bind off, which is beautiful. Love these I-cord edges, would absolutely recommend for lots of different things. And the I-cord bind off at the end just gives it this really lovely finish, nice neat finish. I quite like that not ribbed because I don't like it when it kind of pulls in, so I think that might be something I will consider in the future for other projects. Anyway, so yes, a major case of yarn chicken. Like I say, had diminished or reduced the rows needed anyway, but then the I-cord bind off, as we know, takes quite a bit of yarn. So I was knitting as fast as I could, because as we all know, the faster you knit, the less yarn you use. Why do we do that? But this is what I was left with after my yarn chicken. I kid you not. That's all I had left. This tiny little bit was all I had left. So we should get some stickers, shouldn't we? I played yarn chicken and I won, because I think more often than not we'll have the I played yarn chicken and I lost sticker. But yeah, that was all I had left, so that will get tucked away in. I don't normally kind of tuck away the leftover yarn that I have, because that gets used for other projects. But this is my knitting notebook from Lynne magazine, which I do religiously keep notes and details in it. And I'll also, look at that there. So I'll also put in what yarn I used, the ball band, and then a little bit of the yarn, just to kind of keep track of what I've done. Because if you ever want to replicate anything, or you made some adaptations and you want to do that again, then at least you have it all there. I say I keep notes religiously, pretty religiously, and pretty good. I think what I don't do, and what I should do, and probably what we should all do, is once you have blocked something, is to then go back and do the gauge again and make a note of it, because that's often it is the truest gauge, because in a pattern it will always say kind of when washed and blocked, but I never can be bothered to do that. So actually, if we could only take the time to measure the gauge on our finished items, we might start to gather a bit of data around our knitting. And actually how we work with designers, for example, I know because of a mistake, that I should always go down a needle size in Kate Davis patterns. So it's things like that you can start to learn about your knitting and how you work with designers in particular. Anyway, what a rabbit hole already. So the Pelica Vest, yes, lovely. What to note about it? The pattern is really clear. The I-cord bind off, when you have to kind of either pick up the I-cord bind off or join it to another section of I-cord, is just remembering that you'll need to twist it slightly, because that's the point, isn't it? It's got that twist to it all the time, which keeps that nice sealed in almost edge. So when it tells you in the pattern, it clearly tells you in the pattern, but it's just understanding why you've got to do something. You've got a few stitches that you need to take the needle out, put them in from the other end so that you're twisting that I-cord, but obviously you want to twist it in the same way that it is twisting as you're working the work, if that makes sense. So yeah, so that was something that kind of took me a moment to understand what I was doing. And the other thing to say is that if you are changing balls of yarn at the end of a row, obviously when you've kind of finished an entire row and you think, right, for the next row I'm going to start a new ball of yarn, just have a little bit of a consideration for the I-cord, because and I know you probably all know this already, but there might be some people out there that can't quite get their head around this yet, because I couldn't as I was doing the pattern. Give me 1 second. So if you work the I-cord row, you go all the way to the end, and then with yarn in front you pass along the stitches, so you don't work the last 3 stitches of the row, because then when you come back round to work those 3 stitches at the beginning of the row, you are creating that I-cord, because the yarn is here and you've got 3 more stitches there that you'll need to work. So the yarn that's attached to this stitch pulls the cord around so that you're making that I-cord at the end. So if you are starting a new ball of yarn there, your old yarn is here and your new ball of yarn starts at the beginning of the row, you're not going to get that twist. So what I did to compensate that, because I was working from 50-gram balls of yarn, so I did have to kind of change the ball, I think 4 or 5 times. So I knitted the first and second stitch actually in the yarn that was here, so I pulled it across to create that twist. First and second stitch with the old row yarn, and then I started with the new yarn, wrapping the yarn around the other, so that you're able to kind of conceal that yarn within the I-cord, and you're still getting that twist that you need. So that was something that I kind of had to work out on the fly, as it were. So if you get there and that happens to you, then hopefully you can avoid the 20 minutes that it took me to go, what, how does this work now? So yeah, so I did that. Everything else was pretty clear. Nice even pattern all the way through, and then the buttons. Now, I wish I could claim this for myself. I cannot. When Helen from Nellie and Eve showed me her Pelica, proudly showed me her beautiful Pelica. That sounds like a really weird phrase, doesn't it? But she showed me her buttons, and then she did this. She showed me her buttons like that, and then she went, Ooh, look! So buttons on the inside. Do you do this? Apparently this is what you're supposed to do. So you have your button, the main button, and then you have a backup button, which is to stop it pulling through the fabric, because obviously a button on a cotton fabric or a sewing fabric, a material, won't pull through, but on a knitted fabric, look at me pretending like I've always known this, but on a knitted fabric, that can kind of pull through, so you add a little backup button, I'm going to call it, on the other side. It looks blue here. In real life it's sort of more of a greeny turquoise colour. Yeah, I didn't think I had any little buttons, and I was not going to not finish my buttons, but I managed to find a little pot of greeny blue buttons that I thought were quite sweet, and then I also had some thread that was a perfect match. So yeah, backup buttons as well. Look at me, all grown up. Yes, so I love it. I really, really love it. It's a cotton wool mix. I will definitely be making another one. I love it with a polo neck. Yesterday was quite chilly in the house, and I popped it on and it was just perfect. Didn't have to put the heating on. There we go, that saved a little bit of money, didn't it? So yeah, we'll definitely do another one. It would be nice to have one that I can kind of get to the end on. I did do the cropped version, the shorter version, but I'm kind of double cropped. Although it still sits just on the top of my hips, so not too bad at all. But the buttons were from, we bought them at Stitch Vest Southwest. Lovely wooden buttons from Tom Dyson. Very beautiful stuff. So they've got loads and loads of different button sizes on their website, and also quite a lot of kind of knitting kit, like what's it called? Gauge square measurers. And different kind of knitting tools, etc. So, but some beautiful, beautiful buttons, all handmade, as it says. So that was the buttons. And then the other thing that I was using as I was putting on my buttons, and I wanted to show you, you might have one of these already, but it's these like little magnetized discs, clay discs. So they're really, really good for, you know, for stitching, or your stitch markers to stop them falling down the back of the sofa, as mine often do. So I used that as I was placing the where the buttons should be. I was using these bulb markers, because the great thing about these bulb markers is that you can note the place, and then hello, there we go, and then you can kind of push them through the fabric so that you can attach the thread on the other side of the garment. So this is really lovely, and this was from Zoe Makes Buttons, and I'll put the links for these below, but she has some beautiful handmade clay buttons and sort of knick-knack things. Yes, so that is the Pelica. Much joy for that. And then the other finished object I have this week is the Musselburgh Hat. Yes, finally finished and blocked, and I hadn't seen one in its original form, so when I was making it I was a bit like, is that right? So I'm going to show you now. I'm going to reveal. So the Musselburgh Hat is this tube, and you knit all the way down, and you start one end and you finish another. I have put separate yarn choices so that this yarn is a little bit softer on the head, because this one, the external yarn, is a little bit scratchy. It's not too scratchy, but I think, you know, sometimes on your forehead and stuff, especially when you kind of get warm, it can be a little bit scratchy. So it's softer yarn on the inside. So then you put one inside the other, and you squish it over your head, of course, and then you've got that double thickness rim, which is super warm, super lovely. Yes. So this is for my firstborn. They bought this yarn when they were in Bergen, as I've said previously, and wanted me to knit them a hat. So it is very cold here today in Cardiff, and they are taking the dog out for a big forest walk. So this will be used today. So which is why I had to get the podcast done so that they could go. Will I be making another one of these? Yaha! And I think I've got the perfect yarn, which was frogged from something else that I can't remember now. yes, so I think I probably will make another one. Now I can see how it works, and it feels like a really sturdy, warm hat. So yeah, so that one is done as well. Exciting times. And it's the season, isn't it, for hat knitting? And what we are tending to find in the UK at the moment, excuse me, I'm going to take another sip of my coffee. What we're tending to find in the UK these days is that it's been really mild October, quite a mild November, starting to be a little bit crisper in December, but we don't really get our cold weather now until January time. In fact, we were only talking about it the other day. We have an outside fridge at Christmas. And it is not an outside fridge. It is the plastic box with the clippy lid that we get the Christmas decorations down from the loft in. So once all the tree and the decorations go up, we've got this big plastic clippy box that then goes outside for the stuff that can't fit in the fridge. So things like your juices and you know, your jars of stuff, you know, general bits and bobs really, bottles of lemonade, that kind of stuff, you know, that you use at Christmas that you don't generally use at any other time of the year. But we used to call it the outside fridge. It's in the outside fridge. But now it's not really cold enough to do the outside fridge. So yeah, those things aren't being chilled or remaining cold. The camera was so offended by the outside fridge, it decided it was going to turn itself off. Yes, so not cold enough for outside fridge, which is crazy. Where was I? Yes, so cozy hats, good Christmas knits, because we don't really get our cold weather now until January, February really. So that's that one. And then my HFO, my half finished object. And I think with socks you're allowed an HFO. So I've finished one tube. So these are just a normal set of vanilla socks. I've done some accent colour on the toe, and I'll do that when I do the afterthought heel. These are for my husband, but I'm just trying to get rid of this colour. Not a fan of this colour really. But isn't it the way that when you have a ball of yarn that you don't really like the colour of, God, you can never get rid of the dash stuff. It just seems to go on and on. It's like a self-fulfilling ball of yarn. I wish, you know, the beautiful shades that you love would do that, but that seems to be going on and on and on. It's still huge. Anyway, so I'm going to do contrast heels and toes, and I think with this grey sock, it does sort of zhuzh it up slightly. So finish that tube. I've done the cuff, and I'm on to the mindless knitting of this one. This is in Budget de France, Gumi 50. So yeah, a little bit of mindless knitting there. And then that is it for my active whips. So it's time to cast on my Porty pullover. That's going to be my next one. So yeah, next week probably I'll start to cast that on. I've done a couple of swatches, 3.25 and a 3, and I'll talk more about that once I cast it on actually. Let's not go into that for today. We've had enough pattern discussion for today. So that's the knitting stuff really. So I've got that to look at, to cast on, and then I'll probably cast on another Musselburgh hat with this frogged and start on Musselburgh. Hello, hi, what's happening? You come to say hi? Get off. You okay? This is Chewbacca. Say hi. Hi to everybody. Where have you been? You've been on the back. Yeah. Okay. Okay. All right. All right. So yes. So that's all the knitting stuff. And then I had a go at making soap. I'm going to interrupt myself here with some vital information. So, a spin-along. Quite a few of you have said that you quite fancied joining me on a spin-along. So my plan is to give my wheel a good clean and an oil once I break up from work for Christmas, and to try and get back into spinning. Knowing me, which I do, I need to kind of a deadline, a project to work towards. So I'm going to be spinning for a soldotna. Now, yes, I know, we've discussed Caitlin Hunter's necklines and the difficulties there, but I do really, really like my soldotna, and I think It's quite a good thing to spin for because it's quite a few different colours, but also one solid colour. I mean, the bottom of the soldotna, I'll put a picture here if I can. The bottom of the soldotna has that fleece stitch on it, but the top half is quite busy with lots of different colours, so you don't have to do the fleece stitch at the bottom, which I probably won't do, but an opportunity to do a solid colour and also then that coloured yoke. I say that now, but I'll start to spin and I'll go, I quite like that tea, or I quite like that tea. Anyway, the decision is that we are, shall we do a spin along? Those of you that are spinners, I'm interested in doing and setting up a spin along. For a garment, so it can be a tee, it can be a sweater, whatever is your bag. I'm not going to restrict it like I'm in charge. I'm not going to restrict it to a certain designer or a certain, it doesn't matter. You can if you want to. I'm going to do a tee, probably the Soldotna by Caitlin Hunter, but if you fancy having an explore of something else, then that's absolutely fine. I might try and make a Ravelry group. I haven't done that for a long time, but I'll try and make a Ravelry group, and I will either put details down here for that, or I'll do it next week if I get the opportunity. But yeah, I'll put the details together for the Ravelry group. And maybe we should also have a hashtag to keep everybody together, although I know Instagram hashtags, etc., are going through a bit of a phase at the moment of being either being phased out or being repurposed. But if we go for I'm not sure what we should go for. Let's go for Calon Yarns Spinalong. That kind of makes sense, doesn't it? Calon Yarns Spinalong or the Calon Spinalong. I'll have a think and I'll put it down here of what we can use the hashtag for, and then at least we can kind of keep everybody together and see what everybody's up to. So have a think, let me know, and we'll catch up about it in a fortnight, because I definitely won't get to it until I break up from work. But yeah, it would be lovely to have a bit of a spin along. It would be lovely to have some conversations around that on Ravelry. That's probably the easiest place for everybody to find each other and to be able to post pictures of your progress and to say what patterns you're using, etc. And an easy place for me to kind of find you all. So yes, let's have a go at that, shall we? And that'll kind of keep me on track as well. I'll do more information later, but that's kind of the general vibe. Anyway, sorry, back to what I was talking about before. I had a go at making soap. But yeah, I was going to put a little kind of, not a how to make soap, but this is my soap making experiment. But by the time I put on my goggles and my gloves and my respirator thing, it looked like I was off to some sort of looked like a stormtrooper or something, off to some kind of contaminated area. So I didn't do that. It was quite ridiculous. And it's a good job I didn't, because it's quite a multi-layered process, none of which is complicated, but because you're dealing with hazardous materials, I guess, it becomes a little bit more stressful. So, what are you doing now? So I made some soap, and I will put the link to the video I used because she is excellent. It's Ellie, I think it's Ellie's Handmade, or I'll put it down below, and I'll put the link to the video down below, because it's a really good basic soap making video, and she has got loads and loads of beautiful videos, beautiful combinations, beautiful, I say flavours, but beautiful combinations of soap smells, essential oils, and combinations of milk soaps and oil-based soaps. So yes, I had a little go. I know you're trying to make me relax, but I'm recording here. So this is a piece from my first block of soap. Oh, look at that. It's really cool. And it smells, I used lemongrass. Do you want to smell it? You like it? I used peppermint, lemongrass and bergamot, and it's got quite a pepperminty smell. Would you agree? Yeah? Not sure. You can't eat it, although he does. When I put shea butter on my hands, he likes to lick my hands. So those are the smells, the essential oils, and it is shea butter and olive oil mostly. But it's now got to cure for about 4 weeks. You kind of do it and it settles and it does its soapification. or whatever it's called, and then you need it to cure for 4 to 6 weeks before it's ready to use. So that was fun. So I will definitely be having another go at that. No, I haven't got the butter on my hands. No, I haven't. And it's nice to be able to use lots of different combinations of oils and smells. And you can also, and on the top I put some dandelion, some dried dandelion flowers and leaves. Not that she says to do that in the video, but I've seen them in the shops with those kind of additions, and it kind of gives it a little bit of texture. So I thought I would have a go at that as well. So that was a nice little experiment this weekend, and I think I'll have a go at doing some more of that stuff. Hopefully have some time over Christmas to do it, really. So yeah, I think, oh dear, I think that's all the crafting I've been up to this week. Please let me know what you're up to, and if I have been keeping you company on something, let me know what you've been knitting on. It's quite nice to see what patterns are out there in the wild being worked on. And if you have made soap, let me know. Are there any other YouTubers or any other recipes you would recommend me using? And I've got a load of pH strips, because I think that's as well how you have to be careful, because it's the soap can be quite caustic to begin with, so you have to wait until it's ready to use. So it's all very technical, very scientific. But yeah, so let me know if you've had any experience with that. I do not need any more suggestions of crafts to do. Thank you, those that have given me other suggestions. You know who you are. Yes, suggesting candle making from Knitty Cats. No. One thing at a time, please. But yeah, if you've got any soap making recipes that you'd recommend, I'd be curious to know. That is it from me this week. Thank you so much for joining me here. Please drop some comments below about what you're knitting on or what your projects are. It's always good to kind of have that feedback from you about what's going on, what sweaters and projects are being created in the world. But I will either see you at the next knitting podcast in a fortnight, or I'll see you next week on Sleeve Island. So take care all. I will see you very soon. Diolch pawb, hwyl fawr.